You ready?
Sure.
Ready. Okay. It is 9 a.m. on Monday, December 11th, and I will call the Floyd County Board of Supervisors meeting to order. First item today is approving the agenda.
Make a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll second.
I have a motion by Supervisor Jorgensen, seconded by Kiefer, to approve the agenda as presented. Discussion?
No.
Hearing none, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion is carried. 2 is public comment. We have one member of the public here. Is there anyone listening on the phone line who'd like to make a public comment at this time? Hearing none, we'll move to number 3, which is review action regarding approval of the December 4th, 2023 minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve the December 4th, 2023 minutes.
I'll second.
I have a motion by Supervisor Kiefer and seconded by Jorgensen to approve the minutes of the December 4th Board of Supervisors meeting. Further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor of approving the minutes say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion is carried. Number 4, review action regarding approval of claims.
Claims, I didn't see anything that struck me or stood out.
I didn't either. I just wanted to follow up. Did you have any?
Talked to Tyler Connolly Wednesday afternoon, and he explained to me that it was hard for him to go back and recreate the October statement like we would like to see it, but he said he don't have any trouble doing it going forward. He's talked to all his employees and they agree and they know what to expect. So we'll see what the next statement's like. So, had a nice visit with Tyler.
Good.
Did you get an email from Jacob? He said he emailed you that he gives for. So I don't know if it's a practice you want to get into, but.
Yeah, I don't think I
providers.
have. I can go through my emails again, but I don't remember seeing what came over.
I just don't know if that's the practice you want to get into with other vendors as well.
Okay, well, it's good to know what we're paying for, in my opinion, so. So anyway, I think we're square with Bolton and me.
Good. I'll make a motion.
Go ahead.
I'll make a motion to approve the claims.
Yes, there's a motion, there's a
Well-
second. We'll talk about this.
I'll second that motion.
Yeah. There was one issue that I'm looking up now regarding a sales tax issue.
Oh, again, yeah, I saw that.
And just wanted to talk about that a little bit. It sounded to me as I looked that over, Lexi sent out the description of that one. Sounded like that was county employees. They had a sales tax form on hand. They just didn't apply it. I don't think that could be charged as any fault of the county employee in that case.
I would
That's the
agree.
way I kind of read it. Is that correct?
I agree with you. Yeah.
Is that the way, or Carter, is that the way you understand that?
Right, and by Lexi's comments in your packet, it's been, 1439 has been credited back to the Visa account.
Well, I was glad to see that. On a little broader issue about that, that's something that kind of keeps coming up. And I think sometime maybe during future agenda, we'll talk about putting that more clarification on the sales tax issue on the agenda for discussion. But I'm happy with that resolution of that sales tax issue. So that's my only comments on the motion. Let's see, it was moved by Dennis.
Yep.
And seconded by.
Yep.
Jim. So those in favor of approving the claims, as presented, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Number 5, updates on boards, commissions, and activities since the last meeting.
I did not have any that I attended in the last week.
I attended the ISAC County Beginning Budget Webinar. Also attended the Board Supervisor District meeting Thursday.
Yeah, a lot to learn in that webinar. I caught some of that too.
Yeah.
There's the basic one and then the more complicated one. It's gonna change our process, won't it?
Mhm.
I think everybody's kind of searching to see how that's gonna work.
It's gonna make things more difficult, I think, going forward.
I attended the same two meetings, one online and then the district, two supervisors meeting. This was our report. I'll give you a copy, Tim, if you want to see that.
Yes.
I do say so myself, it's one of the reports that not every county does it. And it's kind of a thing that we've been doing for years and years, and I thought our county report was very good. It was a detailed report of the secondary roads and just some of the highlights that the board of supervisors were involved in 2023.
Only report in color.
Yeah. I did mention, I did put in our board meeting policy. And during the meeting, there was two supervisors came up and asked me about that. The way you operate, found that kind of interesting. So I included that as part of the presentation. A couple people talked to me about the jail law enforcement center, how that was going. And I did get an update from Fayette County on we're working with them on that raise funding. They were sitting across the table. So these meetings are generally very good. They just, you get an opportunity to talk. There were 6 legislators there. Charlie Thompson, Sandy Salmon, 4 others from the area. And there was a wide range of topics, but conversation was dominated by one thing. What was that, Dennis?
Pipeline.
It was just generally the topic of discussion in the eminent domain. There was a lot of concern about it. The one other thing that I found interesting was the kind of a tidbit that ISAC presented, that they are hearing, and it's actually briefly discussed, about statewide setbacks for wind turbines. Apparently some interest in the legislature to require some statewide guidelines for wind turbines. So we talked about that a little bit.
Is there a timeline when they would implement them?
It's kind of more almost like they've heard it is being discussed. What happens is the majority party, they call it the trifecta at the meeting because they have both House and Senate and the governor. They kind of get together and decide what they're going to do. It's kind of the way it works. So that was a part of that discussion. Kathy did find it interesting to note there's also considerable discussion about water quantity demands from regarding carbon sequestration and downloading of what's it take to get that product into the pipeline and on its way. So it was a really good meeting. I enjoyed it. There was one final thing we'll probably talk about later. I know we will. ISAC did phase 1 of their soil study, and they talked about that a little bit. And here is the document that they filed with the utility board regarding that. It was just the first phase of their study. There's 2 more phases, and that's a big concern to Iowans and the county inspectors. So it was a good meeting. Other than that, worked on some things with Auditor Carr, getting the notices out for the meeting tomorrow regarding with Erica Eckley, the Executive Director of the Public Information Board, that we're going to have at 10 o'clock. Making sure those invitations get sent out to people. And just doing a little planning. It's kind of interesting, we're back and forth on where the meeting with the pipelines is going to be. And it is going to be back in the EOC. It was
Yes.
upstairs, now it's back there. And
Yes, just, Friday,
yeah,
Deputy Shirley called me and said the state patrol needed to change their date.
Okay.
The 20th to the 21st.
so we're looking forward to that meeting on the 20th, starting at 1 o'clock. And Dennis, I know you had a comment from a constituent regarding that too, didn't you?
Yeah, I have a resident ask if they could have meetings in either Rudd or Mount Rock for the moratorium on planning and zoning, and either the Rudd School or the Marble Rock location, so.
All right, well, that was my activities for the week. Item 6, updates on law enforcement center courthouse project. What do we find out this week?
Supposed to have our baller this week, right, Gloria? Okay,
I don't hold my breath till I see it.
that's the latest. This afternoon at 1 o'clock, there's one of the water companies that we visited here earlier coming back for another visit to get more information on what it would entail to do the water softening project. And then there's another company coming Wednesday to give us another look. So we'll have 3 of them, 3 estimates. That's all I have, I guess, Corey, was at least, do you have anything else?
I visited with Mark about receiving the pay app, and I included you on emails on that I don't think it's appropriate for us. They're showing the pay app as 100% completed, and obviously there's lots of work to be done yet. So Jason responded to you and I on Friday that to hold on to the pay app. And Bill Huey's going to be on site the week of December 12th to 18th for a walkthrough. And they have a bill as well that shows they would be paid up for 100% of their construction or oversight. And I think that we should hold off on that one as well until, he said he wanted to do a walkthrough to make sure things were completed. So it makes sense that we're not going to pay out for the project or Prohaska yet until they do a walkthrough. That would complete their 100% construction part. So that's what I know. Let's see. NOAC has some parts ordered, and this was from Jason, and we will coordinate once those final pieces arrive. That's another thing. NOAA is not completed with sweepers work for the jail cells on 3rd and 4th, and so it's like, why would we pay 100% without having any control of holding retainage or uncompleted work? Oh, I saw him move up. So, yeah. Yeah, Seth responded about the bollard, and there's Paulson will be on site this week to work on some switches. I believe the switch in the accessory office, yeah. Some other warranties and patching stuff.
I keep getting an email from Chip regarding the in cartel. What is that exactly?
That's the one that you can't approve.
I
That's
can't.
the change orders. There should be a deduct from sweeper and a add-on to Paulson. Paulson did work for sweeper. So it reduces one by the same amount that the other one is increasing.
So Kate will put that one.
Those two are, yep, I think I've got that in the email too. Those two.
Okay,
It's 2,000 and something.
yeah.
That's the change order.
Is there anything else on this?
No, I don't have anything.
All right, item 7, 9:15, we're on schedule, public hearing regarding the disposition of real property, parcel, which was acquired by the county through a tax sale deed. About 4 foot of parcel in the town of North Springs. And at this time, I will open up the public hearing regarding the disposition of that property. Are there any written or oral objections or support of the matter being under consideration? Anyone present here today or on the phone line who'd like to comment on the disposition of that property? Under Carr, we received one communication in the mail, is that correct? Or were there more? Just the one?
Just Mrs. Sherry Hutzel's request to acquire the property, which caused you to hold this hearing. Other than that, I've received no written or oral comments in support of or opposition to. I did follow up with a call to Sherry last week, and she is working today, so she was unable to attend. And if we need anything, we could try calling her. I told her I think it's going to be probably a short hearing and action taken by the board to proceed with the project. So if there was nothing, which doesn't appear to be any.
All comments, objections have been heard. At this time, I'll close the hearing. And the board shall proceed on the matter. Is there a motion and a second to approve the resolution, which is resolution 47-23, disposition of North Springs parcel?
I'll make the motion to approve the resolution number 47-23, disposition of North Springs parcel.
A second.
All right, we have a motion by Supervisor Jorgensen and seconded by Kiefer to approve the resolution disposing of the property in North Springs. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, Auditor Carr, will you call the roll, please?
Jorgensen.
Aye.
Kiefer.
Aye.
Aye. The resolution is passed. Thank you very much. You know. Cheryl. Thank you. Why don't we move to item 10, which is the update from the Department of Corrections regarding the realignment. Is that someone who's on the line to present that information?
When I told them that it probably would be 9:30, quarter to 10, we got to them because of your other agenda items.
Okay, well then we'll move to item 11, which is noting the Floyd County Memorial Hospital audit report, and you received that as an attachment in your packet information. I looked it over. Did anybody give it a closer look?
I looked it over too. I don't know if I can find it right now, but it looked pretty normal to me, except I just noticed how the continued lack of payment. I can't think of the accounts receivable write-off debt, whatever you want to call it. It just continues to grow, and it's not out of line, but it changes, you know, and it gets bigger each year for them.
Mm-hmm.
otherwise, you know, it's, seemed to be kind of on track, I thought.
Yeah, I take a look at it too, and like Jim, I noticed that it's going up, but it's not necessarily out of the ordinary either.
Percentage probably isn't, it continues to rise.
I have no further comment on it, and, if there's any further comment from any of the board or the auditor, we'll just note it's, the report has been received by the board of supervisors. Well, we're down to two things. The update on the Department of Corrections regarding the realignment from the second judicial district. This is the procedure that took place last year when we did have a representative on the second judicial district. I represented the board in that, and that has been taken over by the state, and we're going to get a report on how they're doing. So, and you noticed all the slides that are in your packet. So as soon as we get notice that that person is ready to give that, we can do that. We're also waiting for one of our representatives from the county pipeline inspectors that are here today to talk about the item 9. And so we're just waiting a little while. I suggested it'd be about 9:30. And so I realized it was a little foggy this morning. And, but we'll wait until the representative from Flap Saddle gets here before we start that. We're on time ahead of time here in a little bit.
Cruising.
We can talk about future agenda items. That's really the last remaining thing that's on our agenda.
If I can find, we got an email regarding the matrix.
Yes,
Is that something we need to address?
we do. And annually, actually, we could do that before the first of the year. The way that process works is we have to pass a resolution notifying the state DNR that we want to engage in the master matrix. Typically about 89, maybe 90, I'm not sure, counties do that every year. I believe we've done it here in Floyd County every year. It's been available to us. And you have to pass this resolution every year to let them know that you want to participate in this process. And if we don't do it, it reduces our ability to have input in the citing or in the scoring of the master matrix, really. We have some input in that. And so that's something that we could have on a future agenda item. We've typically put it off till the first of the year. I believe there's a deadline at the end of January, but we can put that on anytime.
Okay.
It's something we have always wanted to be involved. It gives us more information about the confinements and where they're located, and they have to pass a scoring system. That's 440 points out of 880. It's a threshold level, but it's important, I think, to do.
Okay.
We can put that on the agenda.
Yeah, I suppose we should.
Yeah, we can do it before the next year. It's just one thing we can take off of the reorganization meeting, which that agenda gets pretty long, so. Perhaps this idea of talking a bit more about the sales tax issue that kind of continues to burden us from time to time on credit cards. And I know that there were some county department heads that would like us to kind of clarify exactly what that is about. And that could be a future agenda item too. Need to start thinking about what we want to do.
Yeah, be a good idea.
Kind of getting to the end of the year, here are some things we could talk about.
Recording in progress. Sorry, I have to.
Get the, sorry, I was asked to share my screen when Mark comes in or John comes in.
I gotta mute this one.
I missed all that. I don't know what's going on.
Under it, share. Sorry, it's just,
No worries.
when,
Need to go out here.
he's not here yet, but when he gets here, he wants me to share my screen for his PowerPoint.
Okay, well, we'll move on. Just one final thing, just a future agenda. It doesn't have to be next week or sometime, but sometime before the end of the year, I'd like a discussion regarding our Board of Supervisor meeting rules. The supervisors read through that. I think the two that talked to me were quite interested in that. Is that the way you really do business? Yeah. We try to have an orderly flow and one person talks at a time and they wanted to know how that worked. And now we've kind of been doing it for a little over 11 months. I'd kind of like your input. How's that going? How do you think is there anything we could improve? That sort of thing. So perhaps give that a look sometime. That'll probably appear before the end of the year about that. Them this year, so we'll take a look at that before the end of this year. Anything else on that agenda item? Well, we'll move to item 9 now, because we have all 3 of our representatives here from the 3 companies that the Board of Supervisors has interviewed for the role of a county inspector of our pipelines. And kind of thought I'd just kind of lay out a little format to how we're going to address this issue during the meeting. And we're all glad that you're all here. When we set this up, quickly discovered that you'd like another opportunity, and I think it's very appropriate that you get a chance to speak to the board. So I'm proposing that we'll introduce the 3 presenters, or the presenters from the 3 companies. They can make some brief remarks, perhaps tell us why we should choose them. We can have questions from the Board of Supervisors regarding that whole county inspector role process. Take comments from any members of the public like usual, and make a decision today. So that sounds like a process that works for you guys?
I believe it does.
All right. So we have our 3 companies here. Matt's here, Christina, and Tiffany, and Spencer. So let's see, alphabetical, how's that? Clap saddle. All right, Matt, just tell us a little bit about your company, and if you're, yes.
Come up to the table here.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, if you'd like, come up here so people can hear you. This is our microphone, Matt.
All right. Well, thank you for the opportunity to visit with you again this morning. I guess we kind of outlined our staff and our mix. We're based in Marshalltown with offices and staff in Ackley and Ames and Cedar Falls. Done multiple of these pipelines over the years, multiple projects around the state. We do have 2 counties under the letter of intent, with Hardin and Franklin, based around our Ackley office there. And I guess we got multiple people experienced with this type of work. We are, kind of our basis, and a lot of our staff are from rural areas. We don't know about the impacts of land disturbances, tile line repairs. A lot of that's based on where the drainage district engineers in Franklin and Hardin County as well. So, I don't want to belabor the situation and kind of repeat same things we talked about last time I was here, but questions or any highlights that I need to make sure you have?
I think we'll just kind of introduce all three of you, and then we'll just have some general questions and comments from the board.
Okay.
So thank you. Thanks for being here, Matt.
Oh, I'm Matt Garber with Clemson Garber Associates. Sorry.
All right, let's see, ISG. That's her. Tiffany, welcome back to the boardroom.
Welcome, good morning.
Now, you've been here how many times?
A few.
And our other presenters, you were here with the previous board of supervisors as well.
Yes.
Right. And so when we kind of started this process, we just kind of went with those three. And could have been any other three, but the board decided that this was a good group to start with. So welcome back.
Yeah. Well, good morning, everyone. Good to be back. Glad to make the trip up from Waterloo. I'm Spencer Peck with ISG with Tiffany Kruzenga. I'm based in our Waterloo office. Tiffany's based in our Des Moines office. So, as Matt mentioned, I think we've talked through kind of some of the code and other things and specifics to the county inspector previously. Glad to touch on any of that if you'd like, but we'll just kind of talk a little bit about ourselves and our approach to the county inspector process, and then be glad to answer any questions from there. So, it's one of the things that we like to touch on is the experience we have doing these projects, but not only the county pipeline projects, experience working with counties over the years. ISG's been around for 50 years. We've worked with counties in Iowa for 30 plus years on a number of different projects, very heavily agricultural drainage, so very familiar with the agricultural process. I myself grew up on a farm, family impacted by the pipeline, understand how important protection of agricultural land is, as well as understanding how critical and important that drainage district infrastructure is. So with that, I'll let Tiffany touch a little bit on some of the previous experience we've had with the pipeline projects and maybe some things we've learned.
Sure. So we've worked with 16 counties as their county inspector over the years. We also have, I believe, 12, if I remember correctly, designated as a county inspector for the CO2 pipelines, if they're permitted for the Summit lines, including the neighboring counties of Cerro Gordo, Mitchell, and Chickasaw. This year, we've also worked with Cedar County and Chickasaw counties on some smaller natural gas lines as their county inspector, and previously worked with Washington County on a natural gas line. So because we're dealing with agricultural land, it really doesn't matter what's being piped through the pipe. We're there to protect the land. We don't care about the pipe. So it's been good to have some very large projects like the Dakota Access Pipeline that came through, where we represented 13 of the 18 counties, but also working on some of the smaller lines throughout the state. When Dakota Access came through, that was the first large-scale project that had really used at that point, the current Iowa code and instructions for county inspector manual. And so it was really put to the test. We found out that there were some areas that definitely needed improvement. One of the challenges we had was it didn't give the county inspector enough power. Major concern was when they were working in wet conditions, the code didn't give the county inspector sole authority to stop work. After Dakota Access was completed, the IUB hired ISG as a consultant to provide input on where we saw some faults and some ways to improve the code. Many of our suggestions were put into the new revision in the 2021 code that was released. We understand that working in wet conditions is not only important to stop, but it can have long-term effects on the productivity and restoration of the land. So the code is definitely improved. We still feel that working in wet conditions needs a little bit further clarity. So a couple of things that we've been involved with to try and help provide some suggestions and experience was involvement in the ISU study for their soil wetness study that's happening currently, and then also working with some of the intervening counties for the summit hearing. So we did have someone testify and provided some testimony in there. I'll let Spencer talk a little bit more in detail about those, but just shows that we really feel strongly that the code needs to be as strong as it possibly can before any of the CO2 projects or any major projects get approved by any moving forward in the future.
Yeah, just briefly touch on, I'm a civil engineer in title, but I actually studied agricultural engineering at Iowa State. So working with Dr. Tekesti there, helped kind of connect them with through ISAC for the ISU study, and providing some input on what he's found so far, his findings, and how we might be able to tailor those findings for potential changes to the permit or restrictions on wet conditions of soils. As Tiffany mentioned, we did, on behalf of Shelby County and the other intervening counties, testify on our experiences with Dakota Access, what some of those challenges were, why it is so important that the county inspector has that power, and that work does not happen in wet conditions because of the end result of that. So just one other thing I'll mention too, from our experiences, we have a project of this size and scope. If construction does happen, there's a lot of parties involved between the pipeline construction companies and the other inspection for the pipeline and all of those things. It can often be confusing. The landowner has something going on their property and they don't know who they can or should talk to, or I think there's even been instances where the landowners didn't realize that they had a county inspector that was there for them to address any issues. So one of the things that we found really helpful, both in pipeline projects and really drainage district projects or any projects with a lot of landowners, is trying to do a good job of coordinating pre-construction. So recommending with the counties we're working with to, at a minimum, send a pre-construction letter just to the landowners traverse to kind of give them the outline, and then potentially also could hold an informational meeting with those landowners just to kind of explain the role of the inspector, explain what we can do, what we can't do, what the code says we can do, how they, provide them with contact for us, so they can reach out to us if they have any concerns, because it is really important, we feel, before construction to make sure everybody is on the same page, and they feel like they're being served by the county inspector. So I think with that, we'll let you hear from the others, and we'll be glad to answer any other questions you have.
Oh, thank you so much. You brought up some issues that I look forward to talking into some more depth about. So
Sure.
Thank you for being here as well. Our third presenter is Christina Paradise from Snyder Associates. Christina.
Good morning. I'm Christina Paradise with Snyder and Associates. Good to see you all again. I didn't come with a presentation this morning. I'm gonna kind of ad-lib it and just play it off the cuff. Snyder and Associates is proud to represent 8 counties thus far with the Summit Carbon Solutions pipelines, and we have not actually solicited any of this work. The counties came to us asking us to present and asking us if we would take this work. We were happy to do so, and we would love to have Floyd County as well. We believe that working in wet conditions is absolutely critical. I mean, the pipeline cannot construct in wet soils because of the compaction issue. We don't believe that that stripping the topsoil and matting is enough. Even if you strip the topsoil and you mat, you're still compacting that subsoil and you're damaging that soil structure underneath, and we think that is critical. I don't have anything else. Do you guys have any questions?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we certainly do. Appreciate it. We're going to get into a lot of things. So thanks for being here. And we're going to give all of our 3 companies the opportunity to answer these questions in some way. Just kind of a little more formatting. On the front of the supervisor's desk, you'll see some mapping of the Summit route. It starts over on this side where the Summit pipeline is proposed to come in from Chickasaw County, and on this side where it goes out and enters Saragordo County. And that line is about 25.33 miles that traverses Floyd County east to west. At one time, we also had about a 13.89 mile line, the Navigator line, that went from the Valero ethanol plant south through to Butler County. and Bill, I should say, Navigator has withdrawn their permit for, with the state of Iowa, so there's no more Navigator line to consider. But we also have an additional line that came in, I believe, since maybe some of you were even here, when Summit announced a lateral line from the Absolute Energy ethanol plant in northern Mitchell County, hooks down to the main line near the town of Rockford. And so they had a public information meeting at the fairgrounds this summer where they talked to landowners and county officials and others regarding that. That's an informational meeting that's required by the IUB. So on this far side of the table, you'll see the most recent best maps that are available. I contacted Kaylee Langrell from Summit last week and asked her to send me the most best maps that we have for that route. And so they're over on this side of the table here. And I honestly don't know how many parcels there are in that one. But it doesn't really matter. That line goes from Summit's up to main line, north, just by Rockford, all the way up to the Absolute Energy plant. And so it really doesn't matter if we've got lines that are, people are objecting to eminent domain, or they haven't signed a Schedule H agreement. They're still considering whether or not to object to the process of eminent domain. The county inspector's role is to make sure that each and every one of those parcels along all of those routes and the individual agreements that they have, plus the Iowa Code chapter and the administrative rules are followed. So we're not here picking sides or saying anything about that. We just want to make sure that all those miles along that route are given the utmost consideration in this process. I think we're kind of blessed because we got a couple of farmers on the board. I farmed for 49 years in Floyd County before I retired. I have a lot of information about tile lines. Finally, after about 40 years, I was pleased to get all of our farm pattern tiled, and also have the experience of wind turbines locating through that tile line. And so we have some property where wind turbines went through, so we know a little bit about that process of mitigating the effect of a trench going through our tile lines. And Supervisor Jorgensen, been a farmer a long time, so we're gonna get into some issues a little bit in depth, get into the weeds a little bit, if you will, about what's all in this mitigation plan, this agricultural impact mitigation plan that Summit Carbon Solutions has presented to the IUB that we're here to talk about, and talk about what Christina talked about was in what conditions. And hope we don't get into a rut, but we're going to talk about wet conditions and why that's important, because goodness sakes, agriculture is the basic industry of Floyd County, and the tile lines that drain our soils, our high quality soils, are vitally important to our producers. So it's really important that we represent them, and the best way, and the only really way we have, is through picking a county inspector. So the county inspector represents us and their best interests. So that's our goal today. Let's see.
Mark, this great.
Yeah.
Navigator is negotiating with some other companies to sell their easements.
Pardon?
Navigator is negotiating.
Another docket hearing, so there could well be another one at some point in time. But what we're individually considering today are just the two that are viable, the two summit lines, the original main line and the lateral line. just, we're talking about, this, and I hope the supervisors have a chance to review this. This is Summit's Agricultural Impact Mitigation Plan, and it's quite detailed. And it talks about, gives a lot of definitions and what's going to, you know, how the county inspector's role is. One of the things I noticed, and I want to ask all the questions collectively to the three companies, several spots in this document, it says, if proper notice is given, and they're talking about the county inspector will inspect the restoration of terraces or waterways, or will look at the tile lines and the maps provided by the individual landowners. But it says, if proper notice is given, construction shall not be delayed to the inspector's failure to be present on the site. And that language is in several sections of this document. And so, obviously, first question, I hope it's an easy one. Will all three companies commit to having an inspector on site at all times during any part of this process?
That's our past history and what we've done.
And what I understand about it is there might be multiple sites where this is going on at the same time within a county. That's what I've heard is, how do you propose to do that? Have multiple crews?
Multiple inspectors,
Multiple inspectors?
yes. They will travel with the crews.
Uh-huh.
So the man that's looking at the stripping of the topsoil will just travel with that crew and watch that throughout the process.
I'm kind of asking these questions generally, but I want to give every company the opportunity to respond to them, so.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes,
I mean, one of the important parts is, obviously planning for that, because like you pointed out, the mitigation plan does state that they can proceed with construction if we're not present. So making sure we understand what their schedule and phasing is, and we're keeping up to date with that. And then if there's gonna be different crews doing different phases of the work, and they could all be, doing that at the same time in the county. So making sure that we're prepared to staff each of those separately. It's not such that we would just say, we're gonna have one inspector for this county. We're gonna have however many inspectors we need to cover all the work that's active at that time, and that could be multiple crews going in one county at a time.
They may have even multiple tile crews, depending on, how quickly they're working and things. So if there's 3 tile crews, we will have 3 inspectors just with those different tile crews to make sure. So it's not even just the different activities, but the different crews within those activities as well. We need to make sure that we're inspecting all of it, everywhere that they're working, anything that's required to have a county inspector.
what I read the document that they filed with the IUB, they suggested that they thought this whole process across the state of Iowa could take somewhere between 15 to 18 months. That's a lot of work. I'm just thinking about all those individual parcels that there are. They have to have multiple crews to do that. Just from a tile's perspective, when you open up one section of a parcel in Floyd County and then they have another section somewhere else in Floyd County, how do they propose to do that? I mean, doesn't the downstream tile line get affected by what's done up above? How do they go about proposing to make that happen? Summit, how do you think they make that work? Christina?
I don't know about working in the same county at once, but I've met with Grant Terry with Summit Carbon, and he indicated to me that we would have 4 spreads throughout the state. When I say a spread, that's similar to a train. If you think of the topsoil stripping, the staking, those are the first items. They're gonna string pipe and trench, that's another train car, if you will. Welding, coating of the welds, then lowering in is another train car. So that train car will just they will just kind of roll down the track through the county. And so, that's what we're planning on having guys with each one of those train cars, if you will. In addition, we're gonna be taking hundreds and thousands of photographs of the pre-construction condition of the land and then during construction. And those will be filed per parcel. And those can be made available to the board of supervisors or the landowners at their request.
Gentlemen, jump in anytime. I don't want to dominate these questions. If you want, I've got some more, but if you've got some, think of them as they come up. Feel free to answer questions or ask questions as these issues arise, so.
Okay.
Well, let's talk a little more about, Spencer and Tiffany, you talked about your work that ISG did with the utilities board. And more specifically about working in wet conditions. And that's a big concern. A lot of farmers have talked to me about that. I know, I'm sure they have to you as well.
Oh, yeah.
You know, we wouldn't think of going out in our fields and creating ruts. But yet we're talking about allowing a pipeline company to come in and there are specific guidelines in their mitigation plan, talking about construction in wet conditions. You know, we think of every possible way to reduce compaction. We're putting tracks on machines, tracks on wagons to get the grain out of the field. So when people talk about creating ruts in the field and stripping off the soil and matting it, that just brings a real alarm with me, how we're going to protect our soil. So ISG, you mentioned that after you worked with, you were like, you had 12 counties during Dakota Access that you represented, is that right?
13 counties.
And so you had a great deal of experience with Dakota Access. And so the IU worked with the IUB to develop some rules for the second round of what we're talking about today.
So they hired us as a consultant to just provide some feedback on where we thought there were some issues. A lot of the issues were not giving the county inspector enough authority to stop work. So even just minor word changes in the code where they may instead of shall, and really, I mean, when you're talking code, our role is to make sure that the code is being adhered to. If the code is not black and white and there's gray areas, you don't have the code to back you up, and the contractors and the pipeline company will fight you to the nail on you don't have the authority. So it's really important that the code is as strong as it possibly can be. So we provided some feedback on one of them being wet conditions. And we just explained that there's issues, there's not enough clarity on working in wet conditions. It's right now, even to this day, it's better than it was. And you know, we didn't write the code, we gave suggestions and they had their own, you know, agronomists and soil scientists or, you know, providing what the code is today. But working in wet conditions still has a little bit of ambiguity to it. There's nothing that says if it rains this much or there's this much soil moisture, or, you know, there's nothing definitive at this point. And that's what Spencer and I had mentioned is we really need somehow, whether it's through the Iowa State study or, you know, however the IUB wants to put this in place, but there needs to be something where the county inspector, the contractor, the landowner can all look at something and say, this means we can work, this means we cannot work. And you can't have an opinion and try and stop work. It's not going to go on. You need to have something. So the code now does give the county inspector sole authority to halt work in wet conditions, which is very, very important change that they made. But the question is, when, without it being a personal opinion, when can you stop work? So right now, as the code states, it's up to the county inspector, which if I'm a county inspector and I feel that it's too wet, and Spencer is a county inspector 3 miles down the road, and what opinions are going to vary, even if it's very slight difference, and that needs to change. That needs to be clarified. So I think the ISU study is one really important role that could help change that.
Yeah, I think like Tiffany mentioned, the county inspector does have the authority to stop construction, but really the definition of wet conditions is not clear in the code. And the code also does address topsoil and wet conditions, and that, topsoil can be removed in wet conditions, and that negative impacts of topsoil. However, I'm agricultural engineer, not a soil scientist. Dr. Matt Liebman with Iowa State gave testimony at the summit hearing, which I thought was really great. Talked about this. And actually, the greater concern with the wet conditions, construction is compaction of the subsoil. And one of the questions he was asked in his testimony was, okay, you talked about the compaction of subsoil and the negative impact it has for potentially forever on agricultural lands. What's the best way to mitigate that? And there are ways they can decompact that, but he said the single best way to mitigate that is to just avoid the compaction from happening in the first place. And so that's why, I think it's definitely well-founded concerns about them still trying to find methods to work. And as the code says right now, they could do have the topsoil removed and do the matting and try and still work in wet conditions. And that's where some of the research that Iowa State has done, some of the testimony that some of Steve Rocky, landowner that we work with at Dakota Access down in southeast Iowa, that he had good yield maps showing today that he still has problems with this. He was one of the first ones that had these problems happen on his farm last year, and we found that not last year, but during Dakota Access, that, we tried to stop them because it was too wet and there was no power to the county inspector back then. So it's really good testimony to show to the utilities board that, these are the issues that are out there. This is what the real life implication is of this. And our recommendation to them was to put some more strength in that wet condition so that the county inspectors had the authority to stop construction, and that there wasn't going to be negative impacts to the subsoil in addition to the topsoil or anything, or drain tile for that matter, that could be crushed from that result.
So kind of based on what Tiffany just stated, with your experience with Dakota Access, do you expect that's the way it's going to be with Summit?
So the good news is, Tiffany said, is we have the authority to stop construction now during wet conditions. But we would like better clarity on what the utilities board is going to define wet conditions as. And there is also still the opportunity for, if topsoil's been removed, for the matting and constructing on the subsoil in wet conditions. Right now, basically, the only criteria is given for wet conditions is if topsoil and subsoil are mixing due to rutting, which if they have the topsoil removed already, that's not going to happen. And then if it's obvious that damage is happening to drain tile, which, as we all know, drain tile, we sometimes don't even know where it's at. It's buried. It's not going to be especially easy to be able to, obviously point to, hey, you're damaging drain tile here. In fact, what Cole, our chief inspector, said in his testimony for Dakota Access was that he had pointed to that and to the contractor and said, hey, you're breaking a lot of tile here, you need to stop construction. And they had come back and said, well, we'll just fix them next year. So those are kind of the only criteria that define wet conditions right now. And the purpose of, the Iowa State study and some of the testimony at the hearing was to provide a better definition of those wet conditions, because I think anybody involved in agricultural for any amount of time knows that if that's the criteria you're using, I think we're way past what anybody who's been around agriculture would do in their own fields for construction. So having those criteria be a little clearer and a little stronger to avoid that longer compaction.
Would Clap Saddle or Snyder like to talk a little more specifically about wet conditions and how you would foresee you are given authority under the legislation?
Right, we do have the authority, but it's still gonna be a challenging judgment call, like they've said. It could be situational too. It could be certain types of soil drain quicker than others. And maybe this first quarter mile might be just fine. The next quarter mile, it's a sloppy mess. So that's where you gotta kind of develop that relationship with that contractor, that foreman, so that both be under the understanding of what's common sense here, what is, too wet. And that goes along with being present all the time, that you have the relationship with the contractor, that communication will slowly go back and forth, so they're not trying to sneak in crews somewhere where they haven't told you, you gotta be physically present there. Being there with pretty much all the time, having multiple people, also having experienced senior technicians available to, if that relationship isn't there with the contractor, you got enough seniority there on staff in the field to not be pushed around, I guess, is kind of one of the things we've experienced too, is you gotta have enough people with physically present on site with the seniority and those experiences to deal with the contractors.
Yeah, when I was looking through the language in the summit plan, I got a new term. I always thought AI meant artificial intelligence. AI means agricultural strategy. So I'm learning along the way too. Christina, do you want to comment more about wet conditions on behalf of Snyder?
I don't think we're gonna have any trouble from Summit Carbons, with wet conditions, because I believe that their on-site supervision is gonna agree. We're gonna agree that it's too wet to work. I really don't foresee a lot of instances where we have to put our foot down and say, yes, you will stop, because I think that they've been around the block, you know, they know what they're doing, and if they don't stop, we do have a process in place to handle that. And it's in line with the Iowa code and with the agricultural mitigation plan.
Just one last thing on that. I read the filing that Evan Delval from ISG did in April. And this is the filing that they did in the IUB docket. And it talked about what you referred to is that the utilities board contacted ISG and requested an opportunity to discuss some lessons learned during the Dakota Access project. This is all public record, but it stated that ISG had draft resolutions, considerations for all inspectable construction activities, as well as additional considerations for dewatering, decompaction, construction in wet conditions, and others. And it said many of her recommendations were accepted by the AUB and included in the recently adopted manual. And then it goes on to say that ISG is requesting consideration for additional revision of section 6.4 of the manual, as well as 199 of the administrative code. And so do I understand this right? Did you make that recommendation regarding if locations where movement of construction equipment creates ruts of 12 inches or greater, a stop work order should be issued? Did you make that in your original comments to the IUB?
That I don't know if that was, and I guess Evan Delval was one of our chief engineer on that project. He's no longer with ISG since moved on to different firm, but I don't know if that specific recommendation was made in the original work we did with the IUB. But I know that recommendation you made in that filing was to try and get us some sort of a baseline that's measurable to work off of in the field. And since then, you know, we've to try and provide a little more justification and clarity on that. There's been a lot of input from, you know, the Iowa State folks on the agronomy and agricultural engineering department on what maybe a specific criteria might be.
Well, I know you, all three companies kind of comment that they don't have enough clarity, enough detail to stop the companies from working in wet conditions. So I'm just curious if that was something you experienced in Dakota Access, why that wasn't part of your recommendation originally to the utilities board when they wrote that. What I'm referring to is And so this is called additional revisions to the IUB's manual as well as the administrative code. It said in locations where movement of construction equipment creates ruts of 12 inches or greater, a stop work order should be considered. The day after the ISG filed this, Summit filed. In summary, basically what Summit said, that was a legal matter. It was created a change to the board's administrative rules process, and that a docket filing had the process ensures broad stakeholder involvement that is not provided by a letter filed in an existing docket. And should the board decide to open up that rulemaking process to ISG's proposed revision, Summit Carbon will participate in the docket. So they basically objected to that. And that's to my knowledge, that never got implemented. That's a great concern to a lot of farmers. I've spoken with members of the legislature who this particular issue has created so much concern among their landowners, because it seems like somebody is saying, we don't want to take that on. And I'm hearing different from the county inspector, but I just want to tell you a little more history. I was a member of the State Administration Rules Review Committee for 4 years. Joe Royce was the head of it at that time. So I have a lot of experience dealing with administrative code. This is what that went into. And we would deliberate over words, like you said. Words shall, may, just meant everything, because the way it works, the legislators write the law, but the intent of the legislation and how it ends up being administered by the individual departments is determined by their rules. And so these rules are really important. So I'm just going to ask you, why would you want to put in the word should be used? Why wouldn't you want to put in the administration new words shall be used? Because if you say should be used, you're still providing an opportunity for someone not to do it. If that was a concern, why wouldn't you have said shall?
I can't speak for Evan.
Yeah.
I completely agree with you. I mean, shall is definitely more important than may or should. So I can't speak for Evan, and unfortunately he's not here to answer. But I wanted to make one comment on the utilities board. Listened to days and days and days and days of testimony, and I think that if they don't understand that working in wet conditions is the most important or the top 2 most important things that you listen to the entire time of 8 weeks or whatever it was of hearing, I would hope that they would seriously take into consideration, maybe they don't have enough time to change the code, but it could be, something could be implemented into the mitigation plan, somehow into their permit, because this topic came up from every aspect, from landowners to inspectors to attorney, everywhere. And so I think they would realize how important this is and that something needs to be done before a permit is issued.
Yeah,
I don't know if it will, but it was brought up enough that I think they should feel the importance of it.
Supervisor Kiefer, do you have your hand up? Do you have something you wanted to ask?
Well, yeah, I was gonna, what qualifies an inspector? What are the needed qualifications? I mean, if you get more counties, you need more inspectors and you need to hire more people. What do they need? Do they need to be qualified? Have some kind of qualification to do this job?
I guess the guys we have are I think we have 4 senior techs that have been with us for 20+ years. They've got experience moving soil, moving tile lines. They would be the lead inspectors. Would have still, we hire a lot of guys out of Hawkeye Tech and DMAC, their civil engineering tech programs, and they have the sort of basic educational knowledge of some of the mechanics, the soil mechanics and so forth. So we'll, obviously, depending on the time of the project and the schedule, can't have just only senior techs out there. You gotta have multiple layers, but we've been successful in getting kind of that lead senior tech with in each area, and then supplement it with those junior techs that have experience, maybe not 20 years, maybe a few years. They document, they have the technology. They know how to run the GPS units on collecting where those tile lines are found when they hit them. We'll take those shots. Actually, those younger guys know more about that technology than those senior guys as far as that sort of stuff. Collecting the information with the technology is also, we use quick capture on pictures, so it gives a georeference picture, location, shows you where you're pointing. It's downloaded to the cloud and all integrated in a GIS type format. Actually, we've given our clients access to those links so that they can see those pictures right when they're posted if they're interested. So that's helpful. So again, we use kind of a mixture of talent and skill sets of maybe those more senior guys know how to handle those contractors. The younger guys on staff know the technology better. So I guess it's kind of a hard question.
That brings up a good point. Would you have somebody on site at every site that can deal with the pushback from the contractors if there was some?
Yes, we would have.
You'd have somebody experienced enough to do that and not give in, maybe?
Correct. Or, I guess the other challenge to these sort of jobs is we'll have multiple people and kind of rotate them through because these contractors will work. We've got some jobs where they'll work 10, 12-hour days, 7 days a week. So we have to have enough folks to have some redundancy for people to take vacations and so forth, get sick. So that's also the challenge. But that senior person would at least, it's his couple days off, he would at least be available for a phone call and knows the situation of the contractors, the personalities and so forth, that he could step in.
You mentioned, I think you said you had 4 seniors.
And I shouldn't have quantified it. I think of 4 right now, and then we've got 2 others. They're kind of that retired reserve. I think we mentioned it the last time we talked about that they are. They've probably been in the industry for 50 years, and so they've committed to being interested and participating and coming back. So
I think you said a letter of intent from Hardin and Franklin. Supposing you had Floyd County, I don't know how many places they'll be digging at the same time and installing pipe. I just wonder if you'd feel comfortable that you'd cover 3 or 4 or 5 sites that are happening at the same time.
yes, I mean, company-wide, we have right around 50 people total, and we'll some match, go through the schedule and communicate with the contractor well, and then try to figure out how to best cover all of that, grab the costs on your end are passed straight to the county, so, or to the contractor or the developer. So sometimes we will tap in, say an engineer instead of those technicians, so the engineer would still have experience. Maybe they would be the a little bit higher level sort of individuals when they need to be, when they have 6 or 7 crews going, we gotta have that many people there, so. And that's also another reason why we're not going out and trying to, do too many, counties, because we can only support so many. Floyd or Hardin and Franklin, are 2 of our key market areas. We do a lot of work up here in Floyd, and when you guys, reached out, we had a debate amongst ourselves if we could handle one more county. And I guess we got enough, familiarity. We work here in the county already, and we wanted to, we decided we could stretch ourselves and do it, so.
Okay. Christine, you mentioned that Maddie and I think you're all using that process. Could you, I'm not completely aware of what that definition is.
So matting is, as mentioned in the agricultural mitigation plan, the matting is, they'll strip the topsoil and segregate it, and then they'll bring in something like, it's almost like the railroad ties, something similar to that, and they'll lay that down and tie them together, and that'll be their driving surface.
Okay.
So it's like a wooden roadway, and I've seen water underneath those deep, and you just bounce as you ride across. It's almost like you're floating. So it's not preferred at all.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Outside of being inspectors for different counties, do any of the companies have any formal or informal business relationship with Summit?
We do not.
I went in back and checked. We do not have any work with someone at this time, even though double check, make sure we're not doing any survey work for their hog farms and so forth. Probably have in the past, but I think that's a totally separate vision of that.
I know that topic has come up before and has been addressed by county officials. Probably you've addressed it here at the Board of Supervisors meeting previously, but explain for us ISG's relationship with Summit and why did your company's business name get on was well? How was Summit's business card and ISG's business card identified as one? And you know what I'm referring to.
Yeah. First of all, I just want to make it very clear. ISG has no relationship. We are not affiliated at all with Summit Carbon Solutions. I just want to make that very clear. There was confusion in the very beginning when there was informational meetings being held for all of the counties for the line. ISG had signed letters of intent with a few counties already, and some of those counties had the Summit line and the Navigator line coming through. So we decided that we were going to make kind of generic business cards for the counties to have, in the auditor's office, for the supervisors to have, in the engineer's office. So if a landowner came in and had questions or needed their questions answered by a county inspector, what our role is, we would be able to give them proper information. So we made cards for landowners that associated to the Summit line and landowners for the Navigator line. On that card, it was very clear, ISG's logo, ISG's contact information. On that card, it gave the Midwest Carbon Express project name on it so that the county representative could very clearly see this card is for any landowner that comes in for the Summit line. And on the other card, it had the Navigator's project name on it, the Greenway, Heartland Greenway system. And so that was our way to try and make it easy for the county to give the proper contact information based on which line was affecting that landowner. Somehow the Sierra Club turned that around as if we were associated to Summit, and we are absolutely not associated with them. We were trying to make it easier for the county, differentiating the two projects. And it was miscommunicated through Sierra Club, and it started the rumor mill of us being associated to them, and we are not.
All right, thank you for that explanation. I'm looking at the business card, so. I'd like to move on to something, a little something else that, you know, we all know that Summit's not gonna be building the pipelines according to their statement, probably till at least early 2026. They've stated that they're not going to have, build a pipeline in Iowa till they get permits in North Dakota and South Dakota. So we don't really know how far out in the future. But at some point in time, when that happens, I mean, you've got companies have just a vast amount of information to compile about all these parcels. Somewhere here I have a map of all the individual parcels on the main Summit line. I guess it's that one over there. And gosh, there's a lot of files. Now in this documentation, it says once Summit gets their permit, some point in time, then they're going to give 2 weeks notice to the landowners that they're going to start construction. And so what I'm wondering, what's the process of getting those individual easements from those landowners? Because as you know, they can construct an easement that's different than the standard form. And how about the tile maps? 2 weeks just seems like that's a process that ought to be already ongoing, but maybe it's not. Christina.
For our 8 counties, we already have our files set up, and we have imported all the Exhibit H, the eminent domain parcels, and we go to Iowa Land Records and have pulled the easements off of Iowa Land Records, and those are in the parcel files as well. It will be up to the pipeline to provide us with the separate agreements and also with the topsoil depth surveys. But as soon as we get those will be placed in the files as well.
Essentially, yeah, there's a 2-week official notice, but, you know, work will start a lot sooner than that.
Great. And it is the pipeline's responsibility to provide all of that information to us. So if an easement changes from today until that 2 weeks before, and they provide that to us, when they provide it to us, that is what they're going off of. So even if none of us did anything today, which is not the case, but I'm just saying, it is the pipeline's requirement that they give us everything that we need in terms of tile lines. And that would be the way that IUB seems to be tracking that if Iowa were to permit the project, construction wouldn't be starting in 2 weeks, that there would be lots of time to also be gathering those final things. But as Christina said, we already have our layout of all the different tracks, kind of all the reporting for each of those tracks in line, so that when we keep receiving information, it's easy to put those into each track's record that we have in our system. So we won't have every detail until they provide it to us, because you don't want to have old data. You want the latest and greatest, what is true, that last conversation with that landowner. So we will make sure everything is up to date at that point when they provide it to us.
So is ISG compiling tile maps currently?
We are not.
So, yeah, Some of the counties we're working with, we're also working with, as you're familiar with, the Floyd County drainage districts. Some of those counties have asked us, if we're working with them to begin some preparation work in terms of mapping all the drainage district crossings. But in terms of private tile, those conversations are happening with landowners, and it is anything that the utility receives, they are to share with us, we would receive. That's also another, perfect example of, we don't want anything like that to be lost in translation, right? Maybe a landowner gives a tile map, but for whatever reason, it doesn't end up making its way to us. So just another reason, we think it's really valuable for us as county inspectors to connect directly with the landowners pre-construction through that, whatever it's a landowner letter or an informational meeting, just saying, hey, we were supposed to have received all the tile maps you provided, but if you'd like to send them to us, you're more than welcome to provide opportunity for that, just because I know that can be uncomfortable for a landowner, for me to tell them, hey, give your tile maps to Summit, they'll give them to us, that, even though that's supposed to happen, if it was, such that a landowner, hey, we want you to make sure you have our tile maps, we want to facilitate that communication, pre-construction. But this is the last thing I want to touch on too, on the data side of things. You talked about the number of tracks, you're absolutely right. Matt mentioned earlier, that's all kind of handled, at least I'll speak for us, we're through a GIS system. So, there would be a shape file with all of those parcels that are being affected, and then the associated information, the easement, the topsoil depth, any special agreements that were made between the landowner and the easement, that would all be associated, in the GIS with that specific parcel.
And those separate property owner agreements, that's a key thing to get for us, is to review, make sure we have enough time to understand them. Because, that is an avenue where they could put, that property owner could negotiate additional soil decompaction, additional wet soil handling of situations across their ground. We've had property owners say, there's two different layers of clay, a white clay or a white clay and a gray clay. So he negotiated across his half mile. Topsoil was on one side, one's clay subsoil pile, and then a second clay subsoil pile. And we had the contractor do that on that property owner, and then they had to backfill in the right order for each of those. So those agreements, said there are opportunities to not follow the standard template.
Oh, yeah, no kidding. I don't think there's a lot of landowners even are aware of that.
Right.
The Iowa Corridors Association, for instance, has a 7-page document that talks about that to landowners, what things you should consider getting into your easement. I know Snyder provided a document regarding some possible things that landowners could look at when before they considered signing these documents. Tile, wow, because tile maps are really interesting. Just for purposes of example, I brought the tile maps to the home place, the family farm that I grew up on, and it's pretty interesting. The first tiling that I can ever remember done there was done in 1981, and here's the little map. There's no GIS documentation. It's got how many feet and where it was, and who did it. And then the next tiling was done in 1986, and it shows this little bit around the home place where those maps were. These aren't GIS documents, and so when you talk about these landowners, getting them to Summit and getting them into your hands as the county inspector, kind of thinking this would be something to get started, but then we did a bunch of tiling in it was after Dad passed, and Mom and I decided we're gonna tile some more, and so we did this tiling in 92. And then we always knew that there was clay tile over there on that east side, but we didn't really know exactly where. And so when we pattern tiled that whole farm in 2013, that's when we found that old clay tile that had been there since who knows when. And that was put in at every 90 feet, and so we put the 4-inch plastic in between those lines. That was one of the wettest years ever, 2013. That was the year we had that crop year and we didn't get the crop planted, and his tile ditches were left open because they did it in the spring. All of them remember that, what a mess that was. And it just left this impression in me of when we talk about a tile trench across the state of Iowa, a carbon pipeline going across the state of Iowa, how many of these they're going to run into, and what the impact of all this is. And that's why it's really, really important to work that the county
It's
inspectors
the ones
do.
that aren't on paper are what is key to get in contact with those property owners, because when Alliant did the pipeline across northeast Marshall County to power plant several years ago, across our family farm, and my brother heard from my granddad where the tiles were. And yet, you know, some of them were a handwritten sketch, others were done probably when my grandpa was a kid. But, you know, he just kind of generally knew them up in his head. So, yeah, he was able to help show some of us, show some where they were, but as they trenched through, we found others and we shot them. So even the old handwritten sketches aren't 100%. So there's a lot of other information out there.
Clay tile, plastic tile. We have this great exhibition over at the Fossil Prairie Center where there's this digging clay tile. It's an amazing exhibit, and it's just throughout our county. I just think of all this tile that's going to be disrupted. It's a huge task that counties are given.
A lot of times in our work with, in the drainage districts, we've got little push cameras. We hit a tile, and we don't know where it's all going. We push the camera up and we can trace it from the surface on that. So.
There are other questions from the board. Most of mine are.
ISG, how many counties did you have?
12 signed with us.
Carl and Snyder?
8.
4.
Just
2.
Hardin and Franklin.
Okay.
Yeah, pure rectangular letter card.
ISG, you have Chickasaw, Saragordo, Mitchell. Do you have Butler? Somebody else?
Butler's not.
I was gonna say, I don't think Butler is not affected by this.
That was
line.
the Navigator line. I believe, that-
Oh, yeah, sure. It was a navigator. Yeah. So you're connecting, we're in the middle of all three of what you have.
This time I'll open it up for any comments from members of the public, either here or online. Any questions, comments to Kathy Carter?
I'll start off. I have about 4 questions, actually. Spencer, you mentioned you were impacted by the pipeline. Have you got family members that have signed an easement? Well, explain please.
Oh, sorry, I should clarify. My family's farm was to be crossed by the Navigator pipeline. They have not signed, and obviously that's all.
Okay, thank you. The comments, I think more than one person has made about having people on site and 10, 12 hours a day, there's no doubt in my mind that because they're over $1 million over budget, they're 2 years behind, they will likely run 24/7, if and when possible, I believe. Will any of you have inspectors that are gonna be able to handle that? What would that?
Yes, we would have multiple shifts. We won't require anybody to be working around the clock. We would have multiple shifts available.
Yeah, I understand that. I just saying, they're gonna be working hard and fast and furious to get this project going. My other thought is, My situation is somewhat different. I do not have farmland. I do not have tile. What I have is some floodplain lowland with a steep western slope with mature oak trees and pine trees on it. And I have repeatedly told Summit, I will not sign. I do not want damage to my trees. At which point they have promised that they will be able to bore on the east side of the river, under me entirely, and come up on the opposite side of my neighbor's fence line. No damage to my trees. My concern is then inspectors that are knowledgeable in the boring capability and at that length and angles and ensuring that I do not have damage to mature trees.
We had that situation in, Clinton County several years ago on a project where the property owner had a stretch of native prairie, that was established. And his agreement was that it was to be bored underneath that whole stretch. So, there are ways that, it can be monitored and checked. One of those is a locating device on the head of the bore machine. You can get XYZ coordinate as it's being through there. And that might be something to insist on in your agreement, is that they use that technology to give you an exact plan and profile of their facility.
You said that was XYZ?
Yeah, depth, basically, the Z is the depth elevation, and then the coordinate, X and Y would be the horizontal location.
Yeah.
So request them to use that technology.
Correct.
Okay.
And then provide you with what we call an as constructed drawing, so they provide you with a drawing that shows those locations of beds.
Okay. So would they indeed be able to stay under the root system of mature trees? Yeah, they'd be able to go deep enough.
We commonly do that on just say a water main project or anything else that or they'll go 20 feet deep. Beneath the Iowa River there in Marshalltown, they were probably 40 feet below. Started up the top of the bluff and they took it all the way out.
Okay. My response to that then, that reassures me, thank you. There was another landowner who testified, and she's got basically native prairie with a little bit of wetland. She's got a stream running through it, trees on both sides of the stream. And at the hearing, it came out, someone has told her that they will bore under the stream. We're just talking a stream, not a river, but they'll have to cut the trees. So there's a discrepancy.
That's within the mitigation plan.
Complete.
They cut the trees and sell you the lumber, you can sell it. Doesn't say anything about boring. My concern about boring too, there's as much under the ground as there is above the ground. So you bore through and the roots go around the pipeline. And we have examples of heavy winds and it uproots the whole tree. And so is it gonna blow up the pipeline and have a rupture?
That's not deep it is, as long as it's, you get down below those tree walls.
We have karst geology here for shallow limestone and disappearing streams, and they say they're gonna go under the stream. Under the charter.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, a couple questions. They're gonna go under railroads, under primary highways, the 25 secondary roads. What about inspecting, any problems with public infrastructure? Getting it done right, and, continuing problems with, inconvenience temporarily, and repairs and maintenance. We have examples of railroad accidents that were due to boring in Illinois. And the Iowa Northern has requested no permits under their railroads because the ground collapses and the rails get bad and had accidents. And I don't remember how many railroads have crossed in Iowa, but that's a concern. A year ago this spring, my land agent Summit
I'm concerned about my tile. He said, would you like to talk to our excavators? And they said, that'd be great. And I and my tenant and a couple neighbors met around our kitchen table. And there's a guy from Texas who's never worked in Iowa. We were out in the field because it was too wet. And he said, we can work in most any kind of conditions. We'll be on a tight schedule. You Iowa people don't have the labor skills we need, so we'll bring in our own crews. And I had prepared my tile maps, my soil maps. I'm an extension agronomist, certified crop advisor. I've got all kinds of clients who have permanent reductions in farmability, drainage, productivity, resale, rental, assessed valuations. And I had that packet of information, karst geology, sinkholes, stone lines, glacial soils. And he left it on the table. Did you take it? Talked about the ISG request for limiting running to 12 inches should be, so on. And what is it, a month later, some said that was arbitrary figure and they could ignore it. One other thing, I've asked my land agent, can I be there? You know, we're gonna have an inspector and all that sort of thing. And said, no, you shouldn't be there because of your safety. Lastly, I think on some of these meetings, it was ISG, the question was asked, you go to access and got all kinds of pictures of, you know, equipment and all that sort of thing. And did you ever stop it? And so I remember the answer was, yeah, a couple of times, and we should have stopped it other times. It didn't happen.
That's because the code.
Yeah. Is it strong enough now?
Who rewrites that code? Is it the IUB or the legislature?
Well, you're talking about a couple of different things. So the legislature writes the legislative code of Iowa, and the administrative code is forwarded by the executive department heads. For instance, the Department of Natural Resources, the Iowa Department of Agriculture. There's a lot of other ones who write the details, and those are approved by the Administration Rules Review Committee. And that's where the rubber really hits the road on all this fine print. So there's kind of two separate parts there. George, I was forwarded this is something that was something regarding a former resident here. I was forwarded this. This is apparently something you told the supervisors, the previous board of supervisors, regarding the land of county residents, Cliff Kelly, who manages his parents' and uncle's farm. And he was involved with the Dakota Access Pipeline
In Illinois, yes.
and talked about values of farmland. What do you remember? What do you remember about that?
Well, they have continuing problems, their tenants and stuff like that. And Navigator was planning to use a parallel easement across that same property. Heard about more problems in there, and they have had to lower you have to share the damage rent, lower your rent and all that sort of thing. I think we have an example here in Floyd County, the Tolliver Farm. He signed an easement with Summit. He was in a nursing home, and a couple of months later he died, and his daughter heirs live out of state. And they offered for sale to the current tenant and a couple of neighbors for $15,000. And got no bids, and so they had an open auction, and minimum bid was 13, and they finally sold it for 10.5, something like that. That's what's going to happen to my farm.
Cliff Kelly has repeatedly used the phrase, I have never been made whole. our permanent loss.
You raised a question that I think we need to clarify as far as who can be on site other than the county inspector. Am I correct that any landowner can be there, or any person that has a lease on that farm ground can also be on that ground during the time of the pipeline construction? Is that correct? You know?
Yes.
We frequently have.
I was told I should stay away because of my safety.
Well, if you want to dig deep enough into all this history, which I have, you'll see what happened in Dakota Access Pipeline a few years ago, and there was campsites set up. There was protests going on not that far away, and so it could be very contentious issues. And so it doesn't make any of these decisions any easier. We just really do appreciate your getting into the weeds, digging into the ruts a little bit with us today. I just want to open anybody listening online for any further comments or questions. We've been digging into this for just a little over an hour. And we've got a tough decision ahead of us. So if there's any final comments or any questions you might have?
I don't have any at this time, no.
The Board of Supervisors realize how important this is, and it's a decision that'll probably affect maybe a future board, who knows, because we don't know if this pipeline will ever get built. But if it does, let you know something. People that are building the pipelines know how important this is as well. On May 12th, the Board of Supervisors received what is called a FOIA request, a Freedom of Information Act, and request for all the information that this Board of Supervisors and even the previous board, dating back to 2022, had done in relationships with the consideration of ordinances. And one of the things that we were requested was this: documents and communications from January 1st, 2022 to present. Now that was May 12th of 2023, relating to any potential engagement of Schneider and Associates or ISG or similar company, county inspector services related to pipelines. As referenced in the April 10th and April 17th Floyd County Board of Supervisor meeting minutes, including but not limited to any report or presentation prepared or presented by either company at any Floyd County Board of Supervisors meeting, and any email communications between the county and any such company, as well as any agreement between any such company in the county. That was one of 11 things that the Board of Supervisors was requested, and we provided it. Most of these gentlemen you did electronically. I did mine print form. How many hundred pages of documents did I submit? You know, remember? It was thick. You could only imagine, we're talking about constituents. There's plenty of George, Kathy, everybody's back and forth. And so not only is this important to us, obviously someone requested this. Someone wants to know. And pipeline company, who knows? We don't really know. We submitted the documentation, put it in there, but we're just saying how much this is important to not only us, but landowners, but to these pipeline companies too. By the way, we did send this law firm a bill for that copying of all that material, and as of yet, Floyd County's never received compensation for that work. Interesting. I tell you how much I put into that work. We're here to represent the county's best interest and the landowner's best interest. And I believe all three of these companies have expressed that clearly to us. That is our concern. I'm not concerned about Summit Carbon Solutions problems with rutting. I want to make sure that our soil and our productive future in Floyd County and our producers are taken care of. So appreciate you sharing your concerns and your willingness to work with us to be a county inspector. Finally, as the permit hearing wore on and started in August, we got, of course, we're intervening, and so we got weekly updates from our legal counsel, Allers and Cooney. But in addition to that, we started getting weekly comments and daily reports of what was taking place from both Snyder Associates and a little later on ISG. So we really appreciate the pipeline companies that are seeking to become or I should say the inspectors companies that are seeking to become our county inspector are concerned about this issue to update us what's going on at the utilities board. It's kind of a tribunal of we're all together on this. Any final remarks from any gentlemen before we consider a motion here? I don't want to be.
I don't have any remarks.
I don't think so, not right now. Anyway.
Hearing none, we actually have a letter of participation.
We have a letter of engagement from
Letter of engagement.
ISG and a designation letter to the Iowa Utilities Board. And that's from ISG for both the lateral and the main.
Yeah, so we have,
ISG. And from Schneider, you have just a letter of designation that they've provided. And those are to put on county letterheads,
right.
but I didn't do that. Figured you pick which one you want, and we'll put that language on county letterhead.
And all we need from Clapsaddle is a contact person to include in that. So it's not that you haven't provided us anything that we need. Yeah.
You've got our letter.
Right.
And our engagement, okay.
From way back.
A couple months ago.
Yeah, I thought you were contacting the ones to get updated information. So I don't have it in your packet.
No, it doesn't prohibit or preclude you from not being considered because all we need is your contact information. It's essentially a form letter that goes to the utilities board and then designates, sent to Summit, and it's put on the docket, both of these dockets in this case, that the county has considered and chosen a pipeline inspector. Okay. So simply whoever is chosen. So with all of that, and after a great deal of consideration and involvement, I mean, we kind of developed a relationship. We've had ISG here before. You presented on other things. We developed a relationship with Snyder, and lately more so with Clapsaddle. But I would move that we to approve Snyder and Associates as the county's inspector. For both of the dockets that we're talking about, the main line, Summit main line, and the alternate line from Mitchell County down to Rocky. Is there a second to the motion? Hearing none, that motion has failed.
I'll make a motion to Flat Saddle Garber to be the inspector for Floyd County for the summer pipeline and its laterals.
I'll second.
Have a motion by Supervisor Kiefer, seconded by Supervisor Jorgensen to approve Flap Saddle as the county inspector for the two pipeline routes for Floyd County. Further discussion? Why do you support Flap Saddle?
I can go. I like the idea that, I think you're all target for what we're looking for, but I do like the idea that now they've only got a letter of intent with Hardin and Franklin. I do wonder, people get spread pretty thin and you get several trains going or holes being dug at the same time, 40 miles apart. Like the idea of more boots on the ground. That's my take on it.
I would agree with you, Jim. What was appealing is they didn't have a dozen counties, just a couple, easier to take care of. They're not soliciting many more, my understanding. And I think it would be much easier for them to keep an eye on things in 2 or 3 counties than 13 or whatever, 8 or 9. And that was my thought process.
That's from anyone in attendance here, or anyone listening on the phone? I would say I truly respect Flap Saddle and your engineering firm. However, the level of engagement on this specific project by either of the 2 other companies, I don't think that your firm has fully invested in this, that either Snyder or ISG has. And so with all due respect, and respect to my other board members, I think there's a better choice available. Any other comments from any member of the board? The comments, we've taken comments from everyone. Would you like to make a comment, Matt?
Well, I guess we probably haven't necessarily been specifically Floyd County, but Lee Galentine is our principal heading up our Ackley office, and he was testify at the hearings on behalf of, I believe, Hardin County as their drainage district engineer. So he's, I guess he's fully engaged in that process too. So I guess just wanted to point that out earlier.
Thank you. All right, we have a motion and a second to approve Flap Saddle as the county inspector for Floyd County. Those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Aye. Motion is carried. Congratulations, man.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, both ISG and Snyder, for participating in this process. For consideration. At this time, we'll move on to agenda item. We have our presentation regarding how the state's taking over the 2nd Judicial District. Thank you.
Everybody.
You've got a slideshow presentation.
Interesting.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning. Yeah, so a little background information. We were all rather surprised when we started out the legislative session last year that we learned that the second judicial board was likely going to be dissolved and taken over
By Department of Corrections.
by the Department of Corrections.
Yeah,
So having served a long time on that board, second judicial district,
We
of
do
course, that was a
appreciate
long
that.
process. So how's it going?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's going well so far, you know, I think, you know, we're still, you know, doing the same thing we've always done before in terms of, our, officers and agents, getting out to the counties, providing services to our clients that are in the counties. So, you know, providing, supervision and treatment to them. So we really haven't changed what we've done in terms of how we operate. We've seen some, you know, some changes with regard to the budgetary stuff in terms of, and also in terms of hiring new folks for our positions. Tends to be maybe a little slower than what it was before, but I still think there's a lot of wrinkles and things that we're working out and ironing out as we're going forward. So, first, I just want to introduce ourselves too. My name is John Scholl. I'm the residential manager at the BG Clark Center. I started in second district in 1993, actually at the BG Clark Center. So I'm back there after 30 years. I was a probation parole officer for many years. And in fact, I covered Floyd County for a while. I supervised a caseload here in Floyd County before I took this job at the BG Clark Center.
And I'm Jan Lewerke. I'm probation parole officer 3 with second district out of the Mason City office. I started in 1991, actually in the 8th district in Ottumwa, just fresh out of college, had to do something. So went there, and then I came to BG Clark in 1992, and then I've been a probation parole officer since 1994, an intensive officer since 2000, and I do cover Floyd County, so I'm here at least once a week, sometimes more. I'm here meeting with clients, attending hearings at the courthouse here quite frequently. I also cover Mitchell and Cerro Gordo, and I do intensive supervision, so, yeah.
And so we just have a kind of little presentation. We talk about just sort of what community-based corrections, you know, our mission, our goal is to.
We're looking at the one behind you.
Oh, you are, okay, sure.
Perfect.
Okay. Is, you know, safer communities and helping individuals, you know, in terms of way to crime assistance, you know, helping them make changes to address, you know, the very factors that led them into criminal behavior in the beginning, and try to target those factors, reduce those factors, and help them, you know, make better decisions as they go forward. So that's kind of our main mission. Who we are, we have the field service side, we have the probation parole offices. We have 3 probation parole offices, excuse me, 4 probation parole officers in the second district. And we also have 3 residential correctional facilities. The residential correctional facilities house individuals that are there on work release status, individuals coming out of the prison, looking to reconnect with society and community again. And we also have people that are there as a condition of probation. People have been on probation, they may be struggling with probation, having some violations or having some issues, and they need maybe a little more structure, a little more stability. And so we have individuals like that in our residential facilities as well.
And just to make a mention, our other offices are Fort Dodge, Marshalltown, Mason City, and Ames, and then we have facilities in Mason City, Marshalltown, and Fort Dodge. So that encompasses our second. There we get to it.
Yeah, so that's kind of how the state's broken up. You know, we were in 1977, the Board of Supervisors was governing board, oversaw our department, oversaw our budget, our policies, and then on July 1st, with the realignment bill, we fell under the Department of Corrections, and the board moved to more an advisory board, my understanding. So the second district is right there in the center. We cover 22 counties in the second district. And like Jan mentioned, we have 4 main offices and we have 3 facilities. We also have, and there's the other districts as well, the 8 judicial districts as well. So I think this is really interesting. It shows how many people we serve in the 8 judicial districts. So in just the entire state of Iowa, 8 judicial districts, we serve 29,000 people on probation, parole, or pretrial status in the state of Iowa. We have 9 correctional institutions, and right now the prison population is at 8,500, which is like 22% over capacity. So the facilities and the facility I manage in Mason City is, getting a lot of pressure now to really bring in people from the prison. My waiting list has gotten longer. People from the institution looking to get out on work release status. We have 20 across the state. We have 20 community residential facilities. In our district, again, we have 3, which is the one that serves Floyd County here is the B.G. Clark Center in Mason City. And in those facilities, we have 1,185 people in those facilities.
And you house about 55 in the one you manage?
Yep, so the one I currently manage, the B.G. Clark Center, is the only co-ed facility in the district. We have 16 ladies that we house there, and we have about 40 men that we house there as well. So, and
that can be challenging with a co-ed facility, as I supervise some of those clients, so it's different dynamics when it's a co-ed facility, so.
and sometimes trying to keep them apart, trying to.
Yeah.
And it talks about cost. The cost of incarcerating someone in the state of Iowa is $107 per day, daily cost. Where in community-based corrections, the cost is at $7 a day. So it's a lot more cost effective having people in the communities. And not only is the cost less, but also that many and most of our people work and have jobs. So having jobs, they're paying taxes, they're purchasing things in the community. And in fact, in our center at B.G. Clark, they pay rent at the facility as well. They pay $140 a week in rent. And so we have that component as well. The fact that they're working, paying taxes, purchasing things, and also they're paying rent at the facility as well. And that includes not only their housing, but it also includes 3 meals a day that we serve as well.
$100 a day less.
Yeah, it's quite a difference. Yeah, it's more cost effective.
How is healthcare for them covered?
So when they come out of prison, their counselor will help set them up to get them to apply for state health insurance. However, when they do get a job, eventually with most employers, not all employers, they can get health insurance with their employer. And then there's some that don't have any insurance. So either as their probation officer or through the facility, that's one of the things we try to help set them up. Sometimes they're involved with social services in the community that will also help them with that, and also like DHS, because the state insurance is through DHS. So, and we try to avoid taking people that are on disability at the facility because they cannot, it's my understanding, they cannot get their benefits while they're housed in an institution. So we try to avoid that avenue. So.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So I kind of mentioned this earlier, just who we supervise, the services we provide. We have people on pretrial supervision, individuals that have been charged with a crime, and the judge may release them to a pretrial supervision after they're seen by the magistrate. We also do pre-sentence investigations, individuals convicted of aggravated misdemeanors or felonies. Many times we write pre-sentence investigations to the court, and that report is basically sort of a social history of that client. It also has a recommendation section where we recommend some type of sentence to the judge that may best serve that person. We then have people on probation and people who are sentenced in court, and as a condition of probation, they're placed on probation. And that's where we have like Jan and another 2 other probation officers. I think I cover Floyd County. Come over here and see people on probation supervision. Also on the residential side, talked about that. We also have people on parole, people who have been into prison, been released from prison, placed on parole status. I think that, okay.
Was that, did I get all
That's
that?
I think
right,
you covered
yeah,
most of that, yep.
Yeah. So there, right there is kind of the picture of our 3 residential facilities in Second District. At the top, there's the B.G. Clark Center, and I kind of told you about, about 56, 55 people reside there. We are full, run pretty much full almost all the time. And then the Fort Dodge Center housed 66 men, the Marshalltown facility housed 16 men. So in Second District, we can house about 181 people in residential facilities.
The Kurt Forbes Center down in Ames.
Closed several years ago.
Yeah.
There was some budget constraints at that time too, I think. I don't know what all went in with it, maybe you know a little more, but that was a few years back.
Yeah, they did close it, yeah, because of the budget issues.
Yeah.
So there's not a residential facility in Ames anymore. So those individuals will go to Marshalltown or maybe Fort Dodge. The ladies will.
And then actually, B.G. Clark takes, since it's the only one with women, we actually get the females from Marshalltown, from Ames, Fort Dodge, because there is none there. So if they're sentenced to the halfway house, then they have to come to us at B.G. Clark, because we're the only one that houses the females.
This is just kind of some demographics here. Our age range, our client age range, and you see 30 and under is about 34%. The people we serve, 31 to 51. Age is 52%, and over 51 is 14%. Again, demographics, race in terms of 80% Caucasian, 11% African American, 6% Latino, 6% other.
So looking at that, it almost looks like, what's the ratio of incarcerations of Caucasian versus white Caucasian versus any of those others? It almost looks like, is there a favoritism to white people going to these homes? Or these aren't necessarily people in the homes, these are people that are incarcerated, or people
Is
in.
this what our
I
district
think
we
this is,
supervise?
I think this is kind of, I don't know if this is specific to our district or to the state of community-based corrections, or to statewide.
I
So,
thought maybe this is who we supervise as a whole in Second District, like 80%.
Yes,
I think, yeah, I'm not exactly sure on that.
I don't,
Yeah,
the other demographics are. It seems like.
yeah.
in male, obviously, we have more men on supervision than females. And I think, so we talked about what is crime assistance, so what do we do here to put the process to, reduce risk for antisocial conduct. We know that it declines over the lifespan, that's why we got that age thing. You see people who are older, you have fewer people on supervision that are older. So someone gets older, okay.
Age out of
They
it
sort of
sometimes.
age out of it.
Yeah.
Sometimes. Some of the things that we do, the first thing we do is we assess risk. So when we get a new case, the first thing we want to do is assess the risk. And so we have risk assessments that we use. We look at prior criminal history, we look at age, we look at past supervision attempts, and we look at any history of prior violence. And it kind of allows us to put individuals into a category of low, medium, or high, medium, and low. And that sort of determines the dosage of supervision that this person will receive and the amount of treatment that they'll receive. People who are on the higher end are going to receive more supervision, have more contact with their probation and parole officer. They're also going to receive more resources from our department in terms of interventions and treatment. And some of the other things that we look at is how do we help individuals achieve crime desistance. We look at some of the real risk areas that we look at and examine our peer associations. We know that having criminal friends or criminal companions is a big risk factor for individuals. We look at their attitudes and personality, impulsivity, problem solving, substance abuse is something that we deal with daily with regard to our population. Look at emotional regulation, how can they handle their emotions and cope with emotions. We look at employment, housing, mental health, trauma, interpersonal relationships, and parenting skills.
And I would just add, as a high-risk officer here in your community, I deal with those every week, almost every of those categories with every person. I mean, just because they're the high-risk folks, they're high needs, they have issues in almost the majority of those areas. So as an officer, we're not just supervising them, you know, and seeing them, hey, and we are involved and we are in the thick of it in that stuff, helping them, guiding them. We can't do everything. We're not, you know, holding their hand and going out, you know, although I do threaten that sometimes with them, but I don't. But we do help them a lot with those areas to try to get them the treatment and the help they need in those areas. So, you know, just so you're aware, we're fully involved with them in those areas. Maybe because I talked long.
So I think you help it put the pieces together, matching the right dosage with the treatment. I talked about that. People who are higher risk, who have more of those needs that we just talked about in that last slide, we're going to want to put them in more programming, have them involved in more treatment to address those needs and to stabilize them and to help them build strengths and build protective factors in the community. The goal is, obviously, is that we want to see them to be successful, not just on supervision, but after supervision as well. We look at it as more of this is a lifelong thing, and not just something to get you through until you discharge David. So we're talking about how well does that work? So successful discharges, so we look at people who are successful in terms of discharging on supervision. When you look at just fiscal year 21, we had 77%. So the vast majority of the people that we have on supervision discharge successfully. They are successful on probation. They complete their probation successfully. They do things that we have required to do. So it's successful. So if you look at those successful discharges, you look at sort of the cost of community-based corrections, you kind of see that the service we provide, the cost to the taxpayers is significant. Talk about probation revocations. Unfortunately, we do have people that fail on probation as well. That's the reality of it. And so we do have probation revocations. It just comes to that point where that's something that happens. That's the reality of the job. So if you see the reduction just from fiscal year 19 to fiscal year 21, we've really reduced our revocations. And I think that really speaks well to the hard work that's being done by our officers in the community, by our treatment team. We have a big treatment team in our unit that provides a lot of treatment and services to our clients. And I think having that combination of what we're doing has really helped us in terms of bringing down those revocation rates and not sending people to prison. We look at reasons, why do people get revoked? The vast majority of them will get revoked. Their probation will get revoked because maybe they've committed a new crime while on supervision. So one of the fundamental goals of being on probation is that obviously you obey the law, right? So if someone gets sentenced to probation, the basic expectation is that you do not have criminal behavior while on probation. Fortunately, some people commit new crimes, and that leads us to the revocation. And that's the vast majority of the reason why people get revoked from their probation, why they may get sent to prison on a probation revocation, because they've committed a new crime.
And just to speak to that, we do work with them a lot on technical violations because they do accumulate, you know, substance abuse, you know, a dirty UA or missing appointments or missing their treatment appointments. We do go through that, and those are considered our technical violations. So basically, they're not really revoked on technical violations. I mean, there's a rare case where that might happen, but as John spoke to, the main reason is if they commit a new crime, And especially if it's an assaultive crime, you know, we're looking out for the safety of the community, themselves, others. So we really do have to address that and most likely in a court hearing, so.
Percentage of probation clients who did not return to prison. Again, I think that goes back to a previous slide talking about people who have successfully discharged from probation.
Yep, correct.
So. Parole revocation, again, is kind of the same thing with parole revocation. I don't think there's much difference between a probation and parole revocations in terms of the vast majority of parole revocations, again, are due to a new conviction or a new arrest. So these are kind of some of the services that we've offered, and we've seen that we've really expanded, I think, our menu of services that we provide to our clients. If we go back, 10 years ago or even longer, our list of services were we're a lot smaller than this. So we provide electronic monitoring. So this is it's an ankle bracelet, it's a GPS monitoring system, and you'll see this, that we'll put this on our high-risk individuals that we're concerned about, individuals that may have violations. It's a way for us to kind of keep track of where they're at and what they're doing. And we can use a curfew with that. We also have a drug court program in Mason City, drug court program, overseen by one of our officers, and a very successful program. And I'm not sure how many, maybe 20 are in drug court. I'm not sure how many are in drug court.
Yeah, I think generally it ranges between 15 and 20 at a given time, and it's Cerro Gordo only, so they have to have Cerro Gordo cases. I do have a client that has cases in Floyd and Cerro Gordo, and I do have that person in there. And they're ordered on the Floyd too, so it can work that way, but they do have to have a Cerro Gordo case because that's where the program is stationed out of. But
yeah, there's a judge that oversees the program there, the drug court program and stuff. We do random drug and alcohol testing. We do this sometimes with a color program. We have a color program that will operate. Clients will call in to be assigned a color. And when they call in, if it's their color, then they're expected to provide a sample that day.
And basically that's for the randomness. They don't know when they're gonna have to come in, because otherwise, if you schedule clients, they come in next Thursday, they can sometimes, because they're clever sometimes, they can plan their drug usage, so they'll drop clean next Thursday, so that therefore, if we do a colors thing, they have to call every morning and see if they have to come in or not. They never know when they have to come in, so.
Do you outsource that service? Do you outsource that? I'm willing to, because doesn't,
we don't.
Juveniles has so many.
Oh.
Detention, yeah, I know they go around.
We don't
Well, actually, the U.S. Probation Office does. In fact, they outsource us. We have a contract with the United States Probation Office where we collect
for the feds.
Samples for the feds for their color program. So people on federal supervision. We do have a contract with the United States.
So I guess maybe it's a possibility.
So I just wondered, I know they've gone to like our public health for meeting with adults.
Sure.
Urine sample there.
Yep.
Yeah, I just didn't know if you used service like that.
We also have the Iowa Domestic Abuse Program, which actually is probably our largest treatment group that we provide. Is our domestic violence treatment. A lot of in-person groups, but when COVID came along, we kind of got creative, started providing virtual groups, and then recognized that there was some real benefit to providing virtual groups, especially when we have such a big rural area that we cover. Instead of trying to get people from, rural Floyd County or rural Mitchell County into Mason to attend a group, they can attend the group virtually now.
And just so you know, with the Iowa Domestic Abuse Program, if anybody in the whole state of Iowa is convicted of a domestic assault, they have to complete that program. They don't have a choice. We have people from the 90s that never completed it, and there's a warrant out for them somewhere. They're somewhere. So they have to do that, which I feel is a good thing because it is very educational, informational, and can be effective. It isn't always, but it is a good tool for them to have. So.
We also have sex offender treatment program that we offer. We offer primary treatment group. We also do a sex offender aftercare group as well. So we have individuals that are involved in the sex offender program. We also have individual therapy. We have licensed therapists and psychologists. where we can plug people into individual treatment, maybe people that are really struggling at individual time. I think it's important that it's not just one thing to offer everybody, and we have to be able to sort of be cognizant of people's, responsivity, how they respond to treatment, maybe their intellectual functioning, maybe some mental health issues they have that may be specific and may require some more individual targeting type of treatment. And part of that is the EMDR treatment, which is a form of treatment to help individuals who past trauma, to help them work through some trauma that they've dealt with in their life, their childhood trauma. So we do have an EMDR sort of therapist that we give as well. We use assessments. There's a number of assessments we use. The first one really is a substance abuse assessment that we use. The second one is an assessment to assess trauma, childhood trauma, which we see a lot of people in our system have had a lot of trauma. So helping them deal with that trauma from the past as well. The Static 99 is a sex offender risk assessment that we use to assess people's risk for sexual reoffending. And people who obviously are higher risk, we're going to want to see them more and be more involved with them. The modified minis of mental health trauma, looking at anxiety, looking at mental health issues that we need to be concerned about without supervision. So we try to do these assessments up front, so we know where to put people, we know what services to offer them. And again, there's our treatment menu. I'm not going to go through all of that, but that just shows you all the groups that we currently provide in Second District. Again, that menu has really expanded over the years. And we put a lot of resources into this treatment. And we believe that's kind of why you see kind of some of those revocation rates that are lower, maybe the successful discharges that are higher. But we got programming and treatment that we offer. We're not just an agency that monitors people and tracks people. We also try to plug them into the resources and the treatment needs that they need to be successful.
Yeah. So re-entry is a big thing with our department, especially probably within the last 5 years or so. It's about reaching services in the community, trying to engage them. In this local community here, Prairie Ridge is huge, referring people because a lot of people I have substance abuse. So thank goodness Prairie Ridge is local here because I utilize them every day. Also DHS, social services, the Floyd County Hospital, we deal with them too, with some of my clients and issues. So as you can see on that slide, the re-entry, the reach-in services kind of help reintegrate them into the community. So when they get out of prison, the first day I had somebody come in the other day and they've been in prison like 7 years and their anxiety is off the charge, which is to be expected. I mean, it's this huge transition. So we can't, just make that magically go away. But by doing things that are on this list, we can help people to better reintegrate them than just saying, here, sign this paper, you're good to go. That doesn't do a lot of good. So those discuss concerns, establish a rapport. That's huge as an officer between me and my client, that we both feel comfortable with each other. I mean, there may be a rare case where it doesn't really work sometimes, but for the most part, that's a big component of supervision. Connect with community resources, and we kind of talked about just incorporating all that helps for a smoother transition into the community.
So we know that, when we're done with them, they're going to stay in this community. So it's really important, I think, that they get connected to those community resources that they can stay involved with. They discharge because they're going to be living in the community. So I think we kind of talked about the prison population. It's over 8,500 right now, 22% over capacity right now, the prisons are. So Iowa's generally in the bottom 1/3 of the nation incarceration rates. Over 40% of individuals incarcerated have a diagnosis of a mental health illness. 90% of incarcerated individuals will be released back into the community. So we talk about that, they're gonna be back here living in these communities again. So that's why it's important to provide them with these services and connect them with the community resources that they need. So it talks about the United States has a current incarceration population of over 2 million people. And China is a distant second. So we've got a lot of people incarcerated in the country and in Iowa, so. Go ahead.
Yeah, what's the Iowa's recidivism rate compared to other states in the nation?
Don't know that one, either. Don't know that. I'm surprised it's
great
not in
question.
our slide. Yeah, that is a
Definitely
good
gonna look that
question.
up.
Yeah, but the goal is to reduce it.
For sure. Even, no, because I don't deal with the stats like that.
It makes me wonder, you know, I think it's sort of how you measure recidivism. Is it recidivism that they don't commit a new crime while on supervision? Is it recidivism that they don't commit a new crime 5 years after supervision? And so I think there's some gray areas in terms of, you know, how you would exactly measure
I think it's
recidivism
measured by reoffending in the next 3 years.
within the next.
And I
3
do
years.
think that if you go to the Iowa Department of Corrections website, there is some stats, I think the recidivism, I just haven't looked at it recently, so I would hate to guess, but I think there is a stat on there for recidivism, so on their main
One of the, I
website.
know one of the goals of the governor's reorganization plan was to reduce costs. And essentially what you presented is what the Second Judicial District Board has been working on for a long period of time. And
Yeah.
pleased to be part of that. How do you, looking forward, how is this going to reduce costs to the citizens of Iowa? This transition from county designated board to essentially we're a climate advisory board. I haven't been to a meeting, we don't even have meetings.
Right.
Yeah.
So how's that working?
Yeah, I don't know how, I think time will tell on that.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how it's going to reduce cost with the realignment. I know that is one of the goals of the realignment is to reduce costs. I think the first thing that we can do is just really trying to help reduce that risk. Get people who are ready to be in the community back in the communities and back on community supervision. You know, just because you look at the cost between incarceration and community-based services, there's a big difference there. So, you know, I think that's one thing that we can do at least is to try to, you know, just work with the people we have. You know, and what I can do as a manager is trying to get people out of the prisons too, into the facilities, you know, that are ready for work release status, so.
And I just think on a local level, working here, I mean, I appreciate however this makes it happen. My office is up on the 3rd floor. I've been over here for, I don't know, 10 years, 7 years that I've been coming here, and it's always been great having the board, and I know that's all changing now. And the courthouse went through all this remodel, and it's wonderful, so. And I love my office up there, with a nice big window that faces over here, overlooks, everything's good about it, so I just appreciate the kindness of just accommodating us here, because it's myself, and then there's 2 others that come. We pretty much fill that office every day, except for maybe one day out of the week that we don't come here. So we have business here, the clients come in here, they come in here for other reasons besides us, so they're coming here anyway, but it's a good place to meet them, and it works out well.
And I think it's important just to mention, even with the realignment, we're still here. We're still focused on serving the clients we have in Floyd County, and all our clients and providing the services. That's something that hasn't changed and will not change, and so we're still committed to these counties.
As far as me, there hasn't been a big change. I mean, I've really not seen any change personally as an employee. I go about my business the same way I did before the realignment, and I know John kind of spoke to it earlier about we really haven't seen much, but other than merging some services, you know, like on the financial aspect of it. Beyond that, I mean, I don't know if we'll really know for a few years what things will really look like when it all matches out. So it's just kind of a guessing game, I think, right now, so.
Supervisor Ken, was there something that at your last meeting that you reported back that there was a plan for the advisory? Or was there something?
We haven't convened an advisory committee board of the members of 5 million.
Okay, that was county social services or something I was thinking.
I do know our administrative assistant will be reaching out to the auditor to see if anybody on the board here wants to sit on the advisory board. And right now, I think is that, we're planning on coming here, once a year at least to keep you informed as to what we're doing and informed of, what's happening in community-based corrections here across the state. So I know that she'll be reaching out, I think, to see if someone would want to sit on the advisory.
Well, I know you're open to any of the supervisors coming to BD Park Center, look into your facilities. I've been through there, so it's strange, it's worth your time.
Yeah.
To see the efforts of the Department of Corrections.
Yeah, and our office, my office isn't there. Mine used to be in Mohawk Square, which we all know, I think the roof collapsed in Mohawk Square in 2019, I think.
The old high
So,
school building.
yeah, that's where I was for 25 years. And then the roof collapsed and then we were just on the temporary basis. Yeah, well, we were kind of homeless for a while. We were working out of our, this was before even COVID, but we had to work out of our homes because we were homeless. And then we went temporary downtown to the Wells Fargo building by Central Park. And now we're on 211 19th Street Southwest. We're by the South McDonald's fire. It used to be an Old Mercy, I think. AC Nielsen building. Yeah, that's where we're at. So half of that's remodeled. So and that's our office.
That's where our child support recovery, they go out there too?
No, it's
They're
just
not on-
us.
You guys.
No, it's us and I joke, we have a fireworks store right next to us on this side. Then it's us, and then apparently in the second half of the building, they're putting a shooting range. So I think we're just somehow gonna blow up. It's being between the two. I don't know. It's kind of making me nervous. So that's where we're at. It's a nice building though. And we moved in there right at the start of COVID, 2020. So we got in and they told us we had to leave. So we worked from home again. So, yeah.
So I think that's, I think we kind of talked about that. I think the thing is probation remains our best diversion program. Communities here.
I think we got a pretty good, healthy business in Floyd County. I mean, there's quite a few. It's one of our busiest counties, Cerro Gordo, and then is it Floyd? It's either Floyd or Bremer.
Right,
That's right after as far as total number of people, so.
Yeah, so in this, just the sheet of paper I gave you shows we got about 140 people that we serve here in Lake County. People on, pre-trial probation control services. Talk about our most common offenses for our lower level people. OWI, drugs and drug trafficking, sex offenses and theft. Supervision levels from 3 or 5 to higher risk people, assault, drug possession, trafficking, sex offenses. So that's just kind of a breakdown of the people we have in Floyd County. We're seeing here. So.
Well, thanks for your presentation. And,
Well, thank you for that. We're appreciate your time today.
Thank you.
I think it said, you mentioned 40% of them had mental illness. Is mental illness linked to drug use?
Yes.
And how often do you say that is?
Often. I mean, just from my own personal experience, a lot of the clients I feel use because of depression, anxiety. There may be some other mental health diagnosis beyond that. But if they're not treating their mental illness, they're kind of dealing with it by abusing substances. So kind of in that one slide, it showed really to get them to a point where they're gonna be doing well and not using substances, their mental health has to be under control. It's not all encompassing. There are people that are mentally stable but still use, but I would say a lot of times from what I see, they're coexisting together, the two things, the mental illness. And we do a lot of referrals to Prairie Ridge and Mason City has substance abuse and mental health programming. I utilize Pathways out of Waverly, and I think they go to some outlying counties too, and even like in Fort Dodge. And then there's, you know, community health center, so there's a lot of places in Mason City, or, there's even psychiatrists at the Floyd Medical Center that my clients go see, and then another part of that is if they do have a mental diagnosis and need medication, it's a matter of taking that medication, and that can be a struggle as well. Because there are people that really do need to take medication for their mental illness to stay in check. So those are all things that really we deal with on a daily basis. And mental health and substance abuse are huge for their clients.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right.
Thank
you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Thank
your
you,
time.
appreciate it.
Last item on our agenda is to adjourn.
So
Motion to
moved.
adjourn.
So moved.
I'll second.
All right, those in favor of adjourn, say aye.
Aye.
All right, we are adjourned.
And just,
Thank you.
I got a huge education on carbon pipeline today. Holy smokes. Never knew.
You bet. Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right. We'll work to convince you that we can do it.
All right.